Namaskar. Namaste. One more very important word. Dhanyabad.
At the end.
皆様、おはようございます。こんにちは。This is my great honor to be here today and to be invited by India's most trusted and the most influential power think tank, Ananta Aspen Center, here today. This center is very widely well known also in Japan, because this center is the main pillar to support our trilateral dialogue between Japan, India, and the United States. I myself have been deeply involved in this trilateral dialogue process. So I just attended to the luncheon opportunity in June or May, in May in Tokyo, and I was allowed to observe the very beneficial meeting with the Aspen Center people and Prime Minister Abe at the Prime Minister Office building in Tokyo. And also I attended the last opportunity. It was held probably at the end of 2015 at Washington, D.C. And here today, I'd like to raise one very important person's name. His name is Mr. Kasai Yoshiyuki, the emeritus chairperson for Japan Central Railway Company. He's a sort of my mentor, and I have been advised almost every month before and after I go to the foreign countries under the special and personal instruction of Prime Minister Abe. And he is the real person to establish and to maintain the process of our trilateral dialogue. So when I had a one-on-one meeting with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe last Friday, he instructed me to convey his messages to his Indian friends here today. I'm looking forward to my visit to India. Prime Minister Modi and I myself have built the strongest bond ever between Japan and India. And I would like to further deepen the relationship between the two countries in the field of economy and security. I hope from the bottom of my heart that my forthcoming visit will mark a big leap toward that goal. Before getting to elaborate Prime Minister Abe's top diplomacy, let me briefly explain my mission under Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. In October 2015, I was appointed to a special advisor to Prime Minister Abe in charge of foreign affairs. It was the first time to establish a special advisor to the Prime Minister in charge of foreign affairs since the inauguration of Prime Minister Abe's office in 2006. My appointment for this post was intended to help conduct multi-layer diplomacy directly under Prime Minister Abe's leadership. Then, on the cabinet reshuffle in August, a new special advisor in charge of foreign affairs was not nominated, and I assumed the new post of special advisor for foreign affairs to President Shinzo Abe of the Liberal Democratic Party, which was created upon the Prime Minister's instruction. There are two aspects of Japan-India relations which I want to highlight here today. The first is high-speed railways. The construction of the bullet train is a flagship project that becomes the new era the Japan-India relationship has broken. I hope that there is a significant development on the project during Prime Minister Abe's visit to India, and it leaves a strong impression on both Japan, India, and the world. I hope that Japanese technology will be utilized not only for the high-speed railway project between Mumbai and Ahmedabad that has taken off, but also for other lines currently under consideration. The second is security and defense cooperation. The Malabar Joint Naval Exercise between Japan, India, and the United States, which was conducted in July, is a symbol of the defense cooperation. Let me mention that on the occasion of the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore in June, Australian colleagues expressed their country's wish to participate in Malabar exercise. Also, I heard a similar view expressed when I visited Sydney in July. I'm looking forward to the realization of joint development of defense equipment by Japan and India. Today's main agenda on my speech, on my remark, is North Korea crisis. So let me turn to the situation, the latest situation of North Korea. North Korea committed the reckless act of launching a ballistic missile over Japan on August 29. Furthermore, they conducted the sixth nuclear test on Sunday. It is considered the most powerful test ever. It is totally unacceptable and unpardonable. Prime Minister Abe had as many as 2 telephone summit meetings with President Donald Trump in a day on Sunday and shared their views and determination, strong determination to cope with the crisis. The proliferation of weapons of mass destruction from North Korea is a destabilizing factor for our region. We must increase effective pressure on North Korea, and we must not let Asia, out of all places, from turning into a loophole for evading the sanctions. Nevertheless, according to media reports, both China and Russia have been preparing loopholes to evade a ban on imports of coal and iron ore from North Korea. Here, I'd like to introduce 3 messages I conveyed to Washington, D.C. repeatedly on behalf of Prime Minister Abe. First, a series of missile launches have made it clear that now is not the right time to hold dialogue with North Korea. Now is the time to increase pressure on it. Second, I highly value the stance of President Trump, which is exhibited through his words and actions, which all options on the table. Third, in order to deal with North Korea, the principle of action to action is critically important. We have to be aware of the risk that they try to invite us to negotiation for the sake of negotiation, dialogue for the sake of dialogue. So those are Prime Minister Abe's personal messages. The following is my own personal analysis. I think it is wrong to assume that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is getting impatient or that North Korea is feeling being cornered. Rather, several people close to the Trump administration and the Republican Party leadership expressed that the views that Kim Jong-un has the upper hand over Chinese President Xi Jinping, and that Kim is playing upon Xi Jinping. Behind these views are the reasoning. One, that Kim is taking advantage of Xi Jinping's desires to avoid making turmoil, both the domestic and international fronts, ahead of the National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party in October. Second, that the Chinese Communist Party has a deep aversion to the prospect of a unified Korea under strong U.S. influence emerging at its doorstep. The aggravation of the North Korea crisis is enabling China's desired outcomes to be realized by the United States. U.S. procrastination about naming China a currency manipulator is a prime example. I personally am skeptical if Xi Jinping really lost his face by the recent missile launch conducted on the morning of the One Belt, One Road International Forum opening ceremony in Beijing, or by the recent nuclear test conducted on the opening day of the BRICS Xiamen Summit. In other words, the more provocative North Korea becomes, the higher the value of China as a tamer of North Korea becomes for the United States. Although North Korea and China each has around 200 intermediate range ballistic missiles, the United States possesses none at the moment because it abolished this type of missile under the U.S. Soviet Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces, INF Treaty. Of course, the Japanese self-defense forces possess none either. Usually, potential regions such as India and Pakistan in South Asia and Israel and Iran in the Near East possess similar numbers of intermediate range missiles, according to the official released data, creating a situation of mutual deterrence. However, in the Far East, including the Korean Peninsula, the balance of military strength in terms of missile arsenals is extremely lopsided. We Japanese must face up to the fact that the security environment surrounding Japan has moved to a decidedly different phase compared with the previous situation. With this in mind, I personally believe that the time has already arrived to seriously consider the possibility of the self-defense forces possessing intermediate range ballistic missiles and cruise missiles in order to defend the peace and prosperity of Japan. The recently inaugurated South Korean administration of President Moon Jae-in may pursue the path of dialogue with North Korea. The president's 5-year policy plan refers to the possibility of reopening the Kaesong Industrial Park and resuming Mount Kumgang tourism, but moves like that could only subsidize North Korea's nuclear and missile development attempt. From now on, I just want to refer my view on Donald Trump's administration. I understand that Prime Minister Modi has built a very good relationship with President Trump, as shown by his visit to the United States and their telephone conference in August. Japan, India, and the United States should further deepen cooperation toward the peace and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific region as like-minded partners, sharing values and strategic interests. The decision-making process of the Obama administration is of a pyramid type, like this one. In contrast, the decision-making process of the Trump administration may be described as multi-legged, like an octopus. Under the Trump administration, most persons in important positions have personal connections with President Trump. Many of them directly report to and advise the president, as there are around more than 10 aides directly reporting to the president. So the situation within the White House is very complex. At Trump Organization, which represents President Trump's business interests, there are only 23 senior managers. As President Trump prefers the management style of doing big deals with a small staff, he may be trying to practice this approach at the White House as well. In short, what's critically important for influencing the Trump administration's decision-making is to talk directly with the president himself. That is why, in November last year, immediately after Mr. Trump's victory, Prime Minister Abe held an informal meeting with the president-elect at Trump Tower in New York City, becoming the first foreign leader to have a face-to-face meeting with him and shared perspectives on the Japan-US alliance and the situation in the Indo-Pacific region. Moreover, in February this year, Prime Minister Abe played a total of 27 holes of golf with President Trump on a pair of golf courses in Palm Beach, Florida, owned by the president. Prime Minister Abe thus became the first foreign leader to enjoy playing golf with President Trump and built as strong a personal relationship of trust with the president as any other foreign leader has done. By the way, I just want to refer the standoff at Doklam. Japan welcomes the understanding to disengage two armies from Doklam area last week. The Japanese people are confronted every day with China's expansionist behavior in East China Sea and water surrounding Senkaku Islands. I personally feel strongly encouraged by the fact that because of the Indian government's perseverant and resilient efforts, this border standoff has been calmed down through a peaceful means based on the principle of the rule of law, rather than through a unilateral approach. Japan will have a greater role to play as standard bearer of the liberal international order. For Japan, it is important to develop the capability to get things done under its leadership. Japan must formulate strategies on its own. That is what Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has kept in mind since the inauguration of his administration. If Japan pursues Prime Minister Abe's policy line, it will definitely able to promote our national interests. This is no longer an era when a Japanese Prime Minister should wait for a kind of advices from the United States before taking action. Japan will have a greater role to play in defending the peace and prosperity of its own and of the Indo-Pacific region. As you might or might not know, Prime Minister Abe is the first Japanese politician who used the word Indo-Pacific. It is his strong conviction that the national interest of Japan in the Pacific Rim is closely intertwined and heavily dependent on India and the Indian Ocean. Therefore, strong India is Japan's interest, and strong Japan is India's interest. Our bilateral relations is an indispensable cornerstone in the Indo-Pacific region as well as for the world. I sincerely hope our ever-growing relations will serve as the driving force of the world's stability and prosperity. Thank you very much for your attention. Daniel Bach.